All right, Shabbosai, good morning. Let us begin by thanking our sponsors, our Talmud Torah sponsors, Avram and Shane D. Kelman, for dedicating all of the Shiurim and Drashos this month in memory of their parents. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, the Neshamas will have an Aliyah and the family a Nechama. We thank our Week of Learning sponsors, Alan Wiseman, in the commemoration of the 10th yahrzeit of his beloved wife, Rita Rivka Rachel Bas Zecharia Zichron Livracha. Jesse and Rivka Mayrabitz, in honor of a birth of a baby to Shmuel and Shira Artman, whose bris is this morning following davening, Emer Tashem B'Shat Tov Mitzlachos, and Dr. Ron and Marlene Gartenhaus in honor of their sons Harris and Simon, who Baruch Hashem have the privilege to be learning in Eretz Yisrael this year. We'll see with that. Let us begin. So we have a lot to do today. Today's daf is Nun Hey. We are picking up on Nun Daled Amud Beis 54, and we left off mamish towards the top of the daf. About the two dots, 2, 4, 6, 8, about 8. Good, 9. 9 lines down from the top. So remember again, we saw the Gemara says as follows. Ve'imosifin al memches. So remember again, the Mishnah said, we never blow more than 48 tikiyos. It says the Gemara, is that true v'lo? V'ha'ika erev ha-pesach shechalios b'Shabbos. What about the case of Erev Pesach that falls on Shabbos? The Either Rabbi Yehuda, Chamshin Bechad. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you'll be blowing a total of 51. Either Rabbanon Chamshin B'Sheva. According to the Rabbanon, ultimately you'll be blowing 57. That's in accordance with their opinions, as we saw yesterday. To which the Gemara says, Ki katani midi di'isi b'chol shana. The Mishnah is only including events which occur each and every year. Erev Pesach Shachalios B'Shabbos. The less say b'chol shana v'shana lo katani. Erev Pesach doesn't fall out on Erev Shabbos every year. So because it doesn't fall out on Erev Shabbos every year, therefore it's not reckoned as part of the Mishnah. So the Gemara says, 1 second. So if that's the case, Atu Erev Shabbos shebesocha chag mi'isei b'chol shana. Does it always happen that Erev Shabbos falls out during Sukkot? That doesn't always happen either. How would you not have that? Zimnin, like sometimes it doesn't happen. How would that not happen? The example would be when the first day of Sukkot falls out on Friday. So if the first day of Sukkot falls out on Erev Shabbos, ultimately again the Gemara is Shechal Yom Tov Rishon be'Erev Shabbos. Therefore again, Ki mekal inon Yom Tov Rishon be'Erev Shabbos mitchi dachinan lei. That's not true because halacha l'maisa. Remember again, we're talking about a Shabbos b'socha chag. The Mishnah's example was Erev Shabbos falls out in the middle of Sukkot. So Gemara says that doesn't always have to happen. How would you avoid that? If the first day of Sukkot falls out on Erev Shabbos, then you don't have a Shabbos b'soch hachag. You don't have Shabbos ultimately in the midst of Yom Tiv. To which the Gemara says, no. Kima kalinin Yom Tov Rishon be'Erev Shabbos. If it ever happens that the first day of Sukkot falls out on Erev Shabbos, mitchi dachinan lei. We would delay. Now, what does it mean we would delay? You can't delay Yom Tiv. It means if we see that's going to happen, we would extend the previous month. So the Gemara says, my taima, what's the problem with first day of Sukkot falling out on Erev Shabbos? Kevan de'ikli Yom Tov Rishon shachag v'os be'Erev Shabbos Yom HaKippurim emasav. Because listen to this. If the first day of Sukkot falls out on Friday, then when is Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur will be Bechad b'Shabbos, will be a Sunday. Therefore, Hilchach Tachinin. Now, what's the problem with having a Yom Kippur fall out on Sunday? Take a look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, my time Bechad b'Shabbat, v'chashinu mishum yarke u'mishum masye. There's two issues. Issue number one is Chas v'Shalom, if someone were to die, let's say somebody were to die late on Friday or on Shabbos, they would remain unburied for 2 days. Now, you have to understand something. So remember, we never really have a situation like this of a person remaining unburied for 2 days. And the reason, contemporarily we do because we have refrigeration. So there doesn't have to be a decomposition of the corpse if somebody dies. But remember, from the Gemara's perspective, you never have a mace sitting for 2 days. For one simple reason, in Eretz Yisrael, you wouldn't have a situation like this. On Yom Tov Rishon, the Gemara Maseches Moed Katan says, you're allowed to bury al yidei goyim. You could have non-Jews conduct the burial. Yom Tov Sheni, even Jews could do it. Remember, Yom Tov Sheni is only in Chutz La'aretz, doesn't apply in Eretz Yisrael. So the Gemara suggests over here that whenever we see that Yom Kippur is going to fall out on a Sunday, number one, we don't want that because there's an issue of potentially a corpse remaining unburied, and another issue, so interesting, vegetables. Vegetables. What's the problem with vegetables? See, if Yom Kippur falls out on Sunday, you're going to be picking vegetables on Friday in order to eat them on Matzah Yom Tiv, on Matzah Yom Kippur. So what happens if you have vegetables sitting around again for 2 days? Again, remember, we'll say, before refrigeration. So what's going to happen? By the time Matzah Yom Kippur comes along, they're going to be wilted, spoiled, no good. So therefore, we never like to have Yom Kippur on a Sunday if Chazal see that happen. So therefore, again, because we never like Yom Kippur on a Sunday, therefore we're never going to have first day Sukkos on a Friday. The Gemara says, really? Is that true? Is that true? That we go ahead, if we see that Yom Kippur is going to fall out on a Matzah Shabbos Sunday, that we delay it? And we learned Chelve Shabbos Ken Yom Kippurim. The sacrificial fats from the karbanos of Yom Kippur can be offered from Shabbos, can be offered up on Yom Kippur. Vam Rabbi Zera and Rabbi Zera both say, now what does that sound like? That sounds like a situation where what? Yom Kippur is coming after Shabbos. And what it's saying is any leftover sacrificial parts from Shabbos can be burnt on the Mizbeach on Yom Kippur, which sounds like Yom Kippur can fall out after Shabbos. The Gemara says, Rabbi Zera, Ki Avina Be'Rav Be'Bavel, when I was in Rav's home in Bavel, Hava Amri Hadesanya, he said the following brayso: Yom Kippur Mishchalios Erev Shabbos. When Yom Kippur falls out on Erev Shabbos, Lo Hayu Token, they would not blow the tkiyas, right? They would not blow the tkiyas. And remember again, what tkiyas are those referring to? Those are the 6 tkiyas of Erev Shabbos. Remember, we spoke about this yesterday. They would blow 3 blasts in order to tell people that Shabbos was coming, close up your businesses, and then another 3 blasts for what? To indicate that what? Shabbos is here. So it makes sense. When Yom Kippur was on Erev Shabbos, so they would not blow those tekiyos, which of course makes absolute sense because it was already Kodesh. Remember, Yom Kippur is Shabbos Shabboson. It's Shabbos also. So the Gemara says, "U'b'matzei Shabbos lo hayu mavdilin divrei akoli." And when Yom Kippur falls out on Matzei Shabbos, we don't make Havdalah. So we'll say, so once again, what do you see? What do you see? Yom Kippur falling out on Matzei Shabbos Sunday. To which the Gemara says, Kisalikas lahasam, and when I came here to Eretz Yisrael, Ashkach say the Rabbi Yehuda, Brei Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi de Yosef, v'kam Rabbi Kivi. Okay, so this is machlokes in attribution. Machlokes in attribution. But lamaisa, everyone was agreeing that what? Sounds like Yom Kippur could fall out on Matzei Shabbos. Okay, so halach lamaisa says the Gemara lo kasha, harabanan ha'achirimi. The truth is, it is a machlokes. It's a machlokes Rabbanan and achirim. Achirim moment. So we'll say, look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says over here, Harabanan ha'achirim. It is 6 lines down in the wide lines of Rashi. Masnisin Rabbanan de pligi ad achirim. The Mishnah ultimately again reflects the Rabbanan who argue on the achirim. Va'amri ma'arvin ha'chodesh tzorach. So Hilchach Rosh Hashanah be'erev Shabbos lo mikla didachina le. V'hanach masnisin damri mikla v'lo amrin dachina achirim. So we'll say, so again, the Achirim are of the opinion that we would not delay the calendar in order to avoid having Yom Kippur on a Sunday, and the Rabbanon would say that we do delay it. The Gemara says, the Sanya Achirim omrim in ba'atzeres la'atzeres ve'in bein Rosh Hashanah Rosh Hashanah ela arba'a yamim bilvad. Because after all, the Achirim say pretty much we leave the calendar as it is, and therefore in any given year, the Yamim Tovim move by about 4 days, right? There's no difference between this year Rosh Hashanah and next year Rosh Hashanah, except for 4 days, and if it's a leap year, it'll be 5 days. Good. So we'll say, so again, remember, just how do we get into this? Well, the way we got into this is because, remember, the Mishnah said the maximum number of tekiyos is how many? How many? 48. The Gemara just wanted to point out that in a situation of Erev Pesach that falls on Shabbos, ultimately, again, it can be either 51 or 56, or 57, excuse me, depending. So remember again, to which the Gemara answered, we're only speaking about dates which definitely occur. Erev Pesach doesn't only fall out on Shabbos, so that again sparked a whole discussion about is there always a Sukkos, a day of Sukkos that falls out on Erev Shabbos. Good. So the Gemara says it's as Meisvei, Rosh Chodesh Chalios b'Shabbos. When Rosh Chodesh falls out on Shabbos, Shir Shal Rosh Chodesh Docha Shir Shal Shabbos. Very interesting. The Shira of Rosh Chodesh is docha the shira of Shabbos. So remember again, what we're talking about over here, look at Rashi just a moment. Meisvei, Rabbi Acha Damar Token al Kol Mosav. So now we're jumping back. If you remember again, in yesterday's daf, on Nun Daled Amud Aleph, we had a position of Rabbi Acha Bar Chanina. And what did Rabbi Acha hold? He said, Shetokin al Kol Musaf Musaf. Every Musaf offering gets its own set of tekiyas. Okay, so now the Gemara is asking on that. So Meisvei, the Gemara says, Rosh Chodesh Chalios b'Shabbos, when Rosh Chodesh falls out on Shabbos, Shir Shal Rosh Chodesh, Docha Shir Shal Shabbos. The Shira of the Leviim of Rosh Chodesh is Docha, sets aside the Shira of Shabbos. So the Gemara says, V'im Isa, now Rabbi Acha, if it's true that what? That you're blowing tekiyos, the own set of tekiyos for every single musaf, then what? Then what else should happen? You should say shira for every single musaf. Why does the Brisa say that the shira of Rosh Chodesh sets aside the shira of Shabbos? Lema de Shabbos or lema de Rosh Chodesh? Rav Safra said, no, my docha. What does it mean when the Brisa says that the shira of Rosh Chodesh is docha Shabbos? It means docha lekadin. It doesn't mean that we say the shira of Rosh Chodesh and not the shira of Shabbos. Rather, it means what? We say the shira of Rosh Chodesh first and then the shira of Shabbos. Va'amai. But why is that? After all, tadir v'sheno tadir kodem. Well, so we have a concept in halacha that whenever you have two things, you're not sure how to establish precedence. How do you establish precedence? By frequency. And therefore, again, the shira of Shabbos should certainly come before the shira of Rosh Chodesh, because Shabbos, of course, occurs more frequently. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan Leida shehuk for Rosh Chodesh bizmano. No, there's something different going on over here. The reason why we want to go ahead and recite the shira of Rosh Chodesh first is in order that the general populace should know that Rosh Chodesh was established. See, I will say, remember again, the only way people knew that it was Rosh Chodesh was because either if they were present when Beis Din established it or word got out. But it's possible that general populace many times did not know about the date of Rosh Chodesh. So in order to publicize Rosh Chodesh, they would do the Shira of Rosh Chodesh before the Shira of Shabbos. So the Gemara says, "V'haya kera avdinan, haya kera achrisa avdinan." But there's another way we show the people that it was Rosh Chodesh. How the sanyo chel veit tamid shel shachar nitnin mechatzi kavesh ulamato the chalavim, the fats of the Tamid Shal Shachar were placed on the ramp, bottom part of the ramp, bottom half of the ramp. B'mizrach, in the east. V'shal musafin, nitar mechatzi kevesh lamata b'marav. And ultimately, again, musaf fats were placed on the half of the ramp towards the bottom in the west. V'shal Rosh Chodesh, nitanin tachas karkov hamizbeach ulamata. And on Rosh Chodesh, the truth is the fats were placed on an upper part of the ramp. So the placement of the fats themselves show people that it's Rosh Chodesh. So that was the hecker. That was they reminded people. Top of Nun Hey, from Rabbi Yochanan, Leida Shehok for Rosh Chodesh Bizmano. Why did they place the fats of the Musaf of Rosh Chodesh on a specific part of the Mizbeach? In order to show people that it was Rosh Chodesh. I see the Gemara says, Treya Kera Avdinan, the Chazi Hai Chazi, the Chazi Bahai Chazi. The truth is, they made two discernible symbols. One was the placement of the fats, and the second one was what? That the Shira of Rosh Chodesh comes before Shabbos, in order to go ahead and what? In order to go ahead and show the people that it was Rosh Chodesh. So it was so important to show the people it was Rosh Chodesh. They did these two symbols. I'll say, just as an aside, why is it so important to show people when Rosh Chodesh is? Right? Why is it so important? So of course, on a simple level, it's important that people know the calendar, right? Everything operates from the calendar. On a deeper level, Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh says something truly beautiful. He says in Musaf Rosh Chodesh, we say Rashi Chadashim li Amcha Nasata, right? So the Baal Shem Tov says grammatically it should be Rosh Chodesh li Amcha Nasata, right? Why do you go ahead and say Rashi Chadashim, which is plural? The beginnings of new months you give us. Rosh Chodesh Amcha Nasata. Baal Shem Tov says, do you know what the power of Rosh Chodesh is? The power of Rosh Chodesh is Haschala Chadasha. It's a new beginning. Every single time there's a new month, there's an opportunity to remake ourselves. There's an opportunity for rejuvenation. There's an opportunity for cathartic change. The Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh says the truth is though, people often associate this power of change with Rosh Chodesh. But really, Rashi Chadashim li Amcha Nasata. The Ribono Shel Olam gave us the opportunity to experience Rosh Chodesh when? anytime we want. It's not Rosh Chodesh Li'am Chanasata. Rosh Chodesh doesn't come once a month. Rosh Chodesh comes as many times a month as you want it. Rosh Chadashim Li'am Chanasata. The ability to start new, the ability to remake myself, the ability to go ahead and change, that opportunity is always present. So it's almost as if you see Chazal is saying, people need to know it's Rosh Chodesh. They need to know. Why do they need to know? Because Rosh Chodesh is a day that is filled with so much promise and potential. Because any time you see a new beginning, and we feel this as we're coming up towards Rosh Hashanah. New beginnings on one hand are filled with anxiety, but new beginnings are also filled with so much excitement. Because if there's a new beginning, there's an opportunity for a fresh start. There is no telling what I could accomplish. It's not enough to show the people that it's Rosh Chodesh with one hecker. You have to show them in two different ways that it is Rosh Chodesh. Incredible. Meisvei, Tani Rabbi Bar Shmuel, Yochol Kashem Shetokin al Shabbos Bifnei Atzmo Avar Rosh Chodesh Bifnei Atzmo Kach Yu Tokin al Kol Musaf Musaf. You might have thought that the same way that we blow tekiyas for Shabbos and blow tekiyas for Rosh Chodesh, that you should blow separate, independent tekiyas for every single musaf, meaning that on a day where you have multiple karbonei musaf, that you should blow separate tekiyas on each and every one, like Rav Acha wanted to suggest. Remember, I'm going to both say this because that's what we were saying before. Rav Acha Bar Chanina said that you blow separate tekiyas for every single musaf. So you might have thought that that's true. Talmud Lomar uberashei chadshechem. Therefore, the pasuk says uberashei chadshechem tiyufta Rabbi Acha tiyufta. This pasuk is a refutation. Rabbi Acha's refutation. To which the Gemara says, what are you talking about? My Talmudah, what's the refutation? Where do you see a refutation in Barashei Chadshechem? To watch this, we'll say, Amar Abayi, Amar Kra, Ubarashei Chadshechem, when the pasuk says, in the beginnings of your new months, Hukshu Kol Chadoshim Kulam Zelozeh. You see that all months are equated to each other. Rashi says over here, Hukshu Kol Chadoshim Kulan, Le'in Tkiyos, Shitkiyosei and Shabbos, to tell us that again, all Rosh Chadashim have the same Tkiyos. To which the Gemara says, Rabbi Ashi Amar Ksiv Chadshechem, Uksiv Uberashei. Now here's what's interesting. It says Chadshechem, and it says Rashi. Now here's what's fascinating. Chadshechem without the Yud could be understood as your Chodesh singular. Rashi is plural. The Eze Chodesh Sheyesh Lo Shnei Rashim, which month has two heads? So let's get the timing of this Gemara. Havi Omer, Zeh Rosh Hashanah. See, I will say, Rosh Hashanah is the month with two heads. Why? Rosh Hashanah has this interesting duality. On one hand, it's what? Rosh Chodesh. Again, for us this is a bit foreign because we make no reference to the Rosh Chodesh identity of Rosh Hashanah. Right? We make no reference to this. Because again, the new year identity usurps that. But again, on a Karbanic level, on a Beis HaMikdash level, there's a Rosh Chodesh identity and there is a Rosh Hashanah identity. So which is the month that has two heads? Havi Omer Zeh Rosh Hashanah, V'am Rachmana Chadshechem Chati. So watch this incredible drasha. Uberashei Chadshechem. Which is the month where Halacha L'Maisa, it has two heads, but you treat it only as one Chodesh? It's Rosh Hashanah. It's Rosh Hashanah, which also means what? Which means essentially we're only going to blow one set of tekiyos. We're only going to blow one set of tekiyos. So I will say this is a contradiction to Rav Acha, because what did Rav Acha say? Every single Karban Musaf gets its own tekiyos. How many Karbani Musaf do you go ahead and offer up on Rosh Hashanah? How many? Two. One for Rosh Chodesh, one for Rosh Hashanah. And again, you see you're only blowing one set of tekiyos. V'otanya, b'chol shamoy, b'rishon, mahi omer. We'll say further another brayz. We'll say this is absolutely beautiful. The Gemara over here is going to go through the Shiras Halavim on the days of Chol Hamoed. So watch this. V'otanya, b'chol shamoy, b'rishon, mahi omer. What was the Shira of the Leviim on the first day Chol Hamoed? Havu la'Hashem b'nei Elim. Capital Chavtes, right? Chapter 29 in Tehillim. Now, why is this? Why Havu LaHashem and Elim? Give praise to Hashem, sons of princes. Rashi says over here, we're going to do a couple of Rashis over here. Rashi says, Om Havu LaHashem, Kala Mizmar al Shem Shayom Tchila Simchas Beis Sheva, Dahainu Kavod V'oz, Uba'osa Mizmar Kala Hashem al Amayim. Because in this capital, we know this, because we say this again when we put away the Torah on Shabbos. It says, Kal Hashem al Hamayim. The voice of Hashem can be heard on the water. So the water reference is a reference to Nisoch HaMayim. Therefore, this was the Shira of the Leviim. B'sheni Mahayu Omrim. What would they say on the second day of Chalamayid? Ulerasha Amar Elokim. So Pasuk, this is Pasuk Gimel, Kapitel Tes Zayin. Ulerasha Amar Elokim Malach Alasaper Chukai. For the Rasha, Kadosh Baruch Hu says, why are you talking about my ways? So again, Rashi says, Mizmar divrei kivushim l'nasef l'azara l'mitzvah sachag v'simcha sachag u'mochichim malach l'saper chulak k'lamar l'amalacha lavo l'bayis im zeh im shar ami im eincha chozer b'tshuva. The topic of this kapitel is Kadosh Baruch Hu says, why are you coming to my Beis HaMikdash if you have not done proper tshuva? Since it's a time when people are coming together, HaKadosh Baruch Hu essentially reminds us it's not enough to go ahead and come to the Beis HaMikdash, but one must use the opportunity of Aliyah L'Regel to become a Bal Tshuva as well. Rashi also goes on that it says over here the idea of Zevach Elokim Toda, offering up karbanos to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So remember again, generally the regalim were a time that if you owed karbanos, which inevitably everybody did. I was saying sometimes we have this idea that you're chayv a karban, you would drop everything and run to the Beis HaMikdash. That works well if you live in close proximity. But if it's a trip, you might wait. You have nidarim, nidavas, chatos. So you would go and offer that up when you would come on the regalim. So this pasuk makes reference to that as well. On the third day, what would they say? Mia kumli im mireim. So we'll say Kapitel Tzadik Dalid. What's the connection with this particular pasuk? So Rashi says over here, Ubino barim mizmor echadheim, Ubino barim muktam umiyakum li mu'uchar vehi makdimin es ha'mu'uchar v'nir be'enam neishe parshas miyakum li medaberes al tzarasan shemishubadim ba'yesheni. This particular pasuk makes reference to the suffering of the second Beis HaMikdash, but despite the suffering that they encountered being under the dominion of foreign rule, they nevertheless found the opportunity to be besimcha on the regalim. A beautiful, beautiful idea that despite sometimes the fact that we have to suffer with external oppression, the ability to be besimcha during our days of simcha is the hallmark of the Jew. We're going quickly through this. You'll look at these Rashis on your own because they're actually quite beautiful. On the fourth day of Chalamayid, what would they say? Binu bo'arim ba'am. So literally again, the fools amongst the nation. Rashi says over here, so Rashi says, why is this? Why was this the Shira? So it's actually in the same Rashi, Divrei HaMaschil, Miyakum li Imireim. If you look in the second wide line of Rashi, it says, Ulumachar binu barim ba'am, mipnei sha'achshav zman matnos aniyim, shu zman osif, zman leket shichopea. This pasuk makes reference to the gifts to the poor. So halacha l'maisa, this was a reminder that before you go home, make sure you dispense all of your matanos, all of your tithes, all of your gifts to those who are in need. On the 50th Chama, they say, Hasirosi misevel shichmo. I have taken the burden off of my shoulders. So what's like Kapitel? Pei Aleph, 81, sorry. So Rashi says over here, Asirosi misevel shichmo, divrei tanchumin heim, in tisku batzara karasa v'achatzacha, encha b'seiser ram, avchan chamim riva, almaim shinidon alem echad. So this kapitel makes reference once again to rainfall, and we are judged regarding rainfall on Sukkot. On the sixth day, what would they say? Yimotu kol moste aretz. Ultimately, again, the foundations of the world will crumble. Rashi says over here, Yimotu kol moste aretz. The mizmar al kim nitzav ba'adas. Kel v'arm kol mizmar Hashem shikasabo ani v'rash hatzdiku elu ha'maisrus. Shekachu nidrash b'chulin. Again, I will say once again, this was a reference ultimately to Trumas and Maisrus. And again, a warning that when we are not honest with our tithes, or generous with our tithes, I should say, ultimately, again, klala is ba'al li'olam. So we'll say, actually really quite beautiful to just see the shira of all of the days and to remember something beautiful, that the shira was there to convey messages to those who were assembled. So it's almost as if the shira each and every day was like a drasha. It was like a shir. There was a message for the day, an avoda for the day. So the Gemara says, "V'imchal Shabbos be'echad mehem," and if Shabbos falls out on one of these days, so yimotu yidcha. Ultimately, again, we go ahead and we push off, or we essentially set aside the shira of day number 6, yimotu. That's the one that gets bumped. Rav Safra, manach b'hu simna, Hum Bahi. So Rav Safra went ahead and said, if you want to remember the shir of all the days, it's Hum Bahi. We'll say that's just a mnemonic. That's just the first letter of each of the days of the shir. Hum Bahi. Rav Papa Manach Bas Simna Hum Habi. All right, so there was apparently a machlokes about the order of one of the days. Instead of Hum Bahi, it's Hum Habi. Visimanach, how do you remember who's who? Amuhuba Desifri. Samuhuba Desifri also means the group of people who follow the Rebbe. So that's just the word. The word Amuhuba means a group, which happens to be the same word, the same letters as the mnemonic. Tiyufta Rabbi Acha Bar Chanina Tiyufta. They both say again, this refutes the position of Rabbi Acha. Now remember again, because going back for just a moment, Rabbi Acha said we blow tekios for each and every musaf. What we just read seems to be a refutation of Rabbi Acha. Why? Take a look at Rashi. So I'll say in the wide lines of Rashi, it's about 2, 4, 6, about 20 lines up from the bottom. Tiyufta Rabbi Acha. Da Amar Token al Kol Musaf Alma da Amar Lechol Echad Shiro. Va'achi Katani Yimotu Yitcha Alma Lo Amru B'Shabbos Shechalamayim. I will say, what do you just see from this? What do we just say? We just went through the Shira on 6 days. On 6 days of, right, potentially 6 days of Chalamayid. Now, what's interesting to note about this is as follows. What did the Mishnah say? The Brisa said, that when one of these days falls out on Shabbos, what do? You set aside the Shira of that day. Or I should say, you set aside the Shira of day number 6. Day number 6. The fact that you're setting aside the Shira, we're also assuming means what? That you would not blow the tekios associated with that Shira as well. Which therefore tells you that not every single carbon musaf gets its own set of tekios, which then is a effective refutation of Rabbi Acha's position. Okay? Bahar Rabbi Acha Bar Chanina Kramas Nisa Kamar. Rabbi Acha brought a pasuk and a mishnah to support his position. Sam Ravina Lomar Shema Arichim B'Tekios. Ultimately, again, to which the Gemara says, perhaps Ravina says the Brisa and the pasuk that he brought don't tell us that you blow more tekios, but rather again that you extend the tekios. That maybe that Brisa and that pasuk that he quoted on Amar Aleph can be understood to mean that halacha lemaisa, you go and not blow more tekios, but the tekios you are blowing should be extended. Rabbanan the Kesar Mishnah Rabbi Acha Amri Lomar Shemar Bebetokin. Maybe it's not even that you extend the tekios, but rather what? You have more people blowing the shofros. Right? So in other words, that Rabbi Acha was interpreting the pasuk and the Brisa on Amud Beis to say that every single shira or every single musaf gets its own tekios. It appears that we've refuted that position. What do you do with this pasuk and what do you do with this Brisa? So one possibility is it means that you extend the tekios. Other possibility is you just have more people blowing tekios, but it's actually the same number of tekios. So we'll say, now here's what's interesting. What about us who have 2 days? So what do we do? Now Rashi points out to Rabbi Side that this is interesting on a variety of levels. Look at Rashi. It's about 15 lines up from the bottom. We'll say, this is interesting, you saw this the question. What do we in the diaspora of 2 days, what do we do specifically, Rashi says, regarding davening? Right? In davening in Musaf every single day, we make reference to the Musaf of day. We're going to speak about in the next Mishnah the way that the karbanos of Sukkot worked. Each day, we diminished it by 1. So in Musaf, what do you say? Remember again, we'll say outside of Eretz Yisrael there's a Succah Diyoma. So for example, when you get to the second day of Yom Tov, I have a suffix. What's the suffix? Is it day 2 or is it day 1? Well, that's a nafkamina in terms of what you say in Musaf. Do you say the Musaf offering of day 1, or do you say the Musaf offering of day 2? Which one is it? To which the Gemara says, Abaye says we essentially go ahead and set aside the second day. Rava Amar Shvi'i Yitcha. Rava says we just set aside the 7th day, which means we don't make reference to that one. Tanya Kavase de Rava. Imchal Shabbos lios be'echad mehen yimotu Yitcha. Both say, since what we just said before, that Allah Chamayis, if Shabbos falls out during Chalamayid, we set aside one of the shears of one of the day. Which one? Yimotu, which was day number 6. Yitcha. Askin Amir Bernarda, the medalgi diluge. A Meimer established in our that what do we do? Medalgi diluge. And medalgi diluge literally means we skip. But if you look at Rashi, Rashi says something amazing. He says, medalgi diluge v'nimtzu kulan omdin omrim biyom rishon shel chol hamoed biyom hasheni ubiyom hashlishi. Safek sheni, safek shlishi. Well, so we'll say, so what do we do? So essentially, halacha l'maisa medalgin means that on any given day of Yom Tiv, what we go ahead and we do is we say that one and the next one. So we'll say, which gives rise to contemporary practice. What do we do in our Musaf and in our Kriyas HaTorah? We always go ahead and mention 2 days. We mentioned 2 days. This way, again, that covers the Sveika Diyoma. Right? This way, again, either way, whichever day of Yom Tiv it is, I'm covered. And we do this in Musaf, and we do this in Kriyas HaTorah. Pretty incredible. So I'll say that again comes from the Gemara. Amud Beis. Mishnah. We'll say very, very, very exciting Mishnah here. Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag Hayu Sham Yud Gimel Parim. So we'll say, listen to this. We're going to go now through the sacrificial order of Sukkos. So the Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag, the first day of Yom Tov, Hayu Sham Yud Gimel Parim. They had 13 parim, 13 bulls, Elim Shnayim, 2 rams, V'sa'ir Echad, and 1 seir, 1 goat. Okay, so we'll say Nishtairu Sham Yud Daled Kvasim L'Shmona Mishmaros. In addition to that, there are also 14. One exception, the Yud Gimel Parim. Right, the 13 cows, you start with 13, and then each day of Yom Tiv, excuse me, each day of Yom Tiv, you take 1 off. Now, there's the Mishnah is operating with a premise which is unstated, which is as follows. We know that halacha l'maisa, Kohanim are divided up into 24 mishmaros, 24 shifts, right? And each mishmar served in the Beis HaMikdash for 1 week a year. The truth is, they all served for 2 weeks a year. Some of them served for a little bit more. They served for a week during the year. So again, during that week that your mishmar is on duty, remember a mishmar was made up of what? Multiple bate avos, families. So over the course of that week, the avoda was divided up amongst the multiple bate avos. The exception to this is the regalim. On the regalim, all kohanim who want to serve have the ability to do so. And what we do is we make sure that the avoda of Yom Tiv is divided up amongst all of the mishmar. So for example, take a look at Rashi for just a moment over here. Rashi says, Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag B'chol HaMishmoros Olos L'Regel. All of the shifts of the Kohanim come up to the Beis HaMikdash. B'sheish esrei mehen makrivin sheish esrei behemos halalu. And 16 of the Mishmoros go ahead and offer up these 16 animals. So we'll say, so now watch this. So let's go back to Mishnah. Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag, what would they offer up? 13 parim, Elim Shnayim, right? Two elim, two rams, we'll call them. Sayir Echad, 1 goat. So we'll say, so remember again, that is a total of 13 plus 2 plus 1 is 16, right? So we've got 16 taken care of over here. Nishtairu Sham Yud Dalet Kvasim. So remember again, 16, right? There's a total of 24 mishmoros. So therefore, what does that do? Nishtairu Sham Yud Dalet Kvasim L'Shron Shor. So we're assuming each mishmar offers up 1 of the aforementioned animals, which then leaves what? 8 mishmoros to take care of the 14 sheep. I will say, you hear the math? So remember again, the 13 parim, 2 elim, 1 seir, that's 16. There are 24 mishmoros of Kohanim now serving in the Beis HaMikdash on the regal. So 16 of those mishmoros take care of the first 16 animals. Each of them offer up 1 of these animals. That then leaves 8 mishmoros to complete the 24, 8 mishmoros and 14 kvasim, 14 sheep. So we'll say the Mishnah is now going to discuss how we go ahead and we split up these karbanos. So therefore, b'yom rishon, on the first day, shisha makrivin shnayim, 6 shnayim, 6 of the remaining mishmoros will offer up 2 of these kivasim each. And therefore, again, makrivin shnayim, ba'ashar echad, and the rest will offer up 1 keves. But we'll say all the Mishnah is going to do now is just show how the numbers change based on the removal of 1 par per day. So remember again, everything else in this list remains the same except for the 13 parim. Those are diminished by 1 each day. So therefore, again, b'sheni on the second day. So we'll say, remember again, we're not focusing now on we're focusing now on how the remaining 14 kvasim are divided up. Because essentially the way it works is like this: one mishmar per par, one mishmar per ayol, and one mishmar per so'ir. Right? The only time that the numbers, the way the division divides up, is with the Yud Dalet Kvasim, with the 14 sheep at the end. So B'Sheni, on the second day Yom Tiv, Chamisha Makrivim Shabbos. Remember again, on day number two, so now instead of Yud Gimel Parim, we have what? 12 Parim. So that pushes everything down. Therefore, B'Sheni, Chamisha Makrivim Shtayim, 5 of the remaining groups. Because remember again, 5 of the remaining groups will offer up 2 Kvasim each, Vashar Echad Echad. And the rest will offer up one at a time. One at a time. So the Gemara, or what should I say, one per mishmar. B'shlishi on the third day, Dalid Makrivim Shtayim. Ultimately on the third day, 4 of the groups, 4 of the remaining mishmoros, will go ahead and offer up 2 kavasim each, Vashar Echad Echad, and the remaining groups 1 keves each. B'revi'i on the fourth day, Shlosha Makrivim Shtayim. You'll have 3 of the remaining mishmoros offering up 2 kavasim each, Vashar Echad Echad, and the rest of the groups 1 keves each. B'chamishi on the 5th day, Shtayim Makrivim Shtayim. You'll have ultimately again 2 groups offering 2 kavasim each, Vashar Echad Echad, and the remaining groups 1 each. B'shishi on the 6th day, Echad Makriv Shnayim. 1 of the remaining mishmaros offers up 2 kavasim, Vashar Echad Echad, and the rest of them ultimately going ahead and offering up 1. Ubeshvi'i, and on the 7th day, Kulon Shavin. Everyone is the same. Look at Rashi, almost right across in Rashi. V'kulon b'shvi kulon shavin, kala mishmoros hamakrivos kvasim shavos. By the time you get to the 7th day, all of the remaining 8 mishmoros, who are, well, it's more than 8 now, who are offering up kavasim, were all offering up the same kavasim. They were all offering up 1. Shekol achas makreves echad share'enam ela shiva parim, because by the time you get to day number 7, there are only 7 parim, right? We started with 13, we work our way down to 7. Ve'elim shnayim, v'sar echad la'asar mishmaros, nishtayru yudal kavasim li'udal mishmaros. So by the time you get to day number 7, you have 14 sheep and 14 mishmoros that still need to be assigned a carbon. And therefore, Allah Lamaisa, everyone is offering up 1 keves. Beautiful. Bishmini, they're also on the 8th day. And remember again, what's the 8th day? Shmini Atzeres. We already spoke about, again, remember, Shmini Atzeres is different than the rest of the days of Yom Tov. How? Pizar Kishav. So what happens on day number 8? Chazru Lepayis. New lottery. Remember again, so Shmini Atzeres is reckoned at, first of all, we'll say Shmini Atzeres is going to be different because the sacrificial service of Shmini Atzeres is different. And remember at this, see, the beauty of Sukkot is there is enough karbanos for every single mishmar. That is not true on Shmini Atzeres. So therefore, again, Shmini Atzeres is a regal, which means all of the mishmoros are there. They're all there, but you don't have enough karbanos for everyone. So what do? Lottery. We go back to a lottery, back to our Yuma days. We go back to a lottery. So the Gemara says, Amru misha hekriv parim ayom lo yakriv lamachar ela cholzun chalila. Furthermore, again, I will say it was a schus to be able to offer up the parim, right? The 13 parim, you start out with 13, go down to 7. And whoever got to offer up a par today would not offer up a par the next. In other words, as much as everyone is participating in the sacrificial service, we wanted to give everyone an opportunity to go ahead and offer up a par. So if you got a par today, you weren't included in that service tomorrow. Again, the beauty of the first 6 days of Sukkot is there was enough for everyone. So there was no lottery, but there were assignments. If you get a par today, you don't get a par tomorrow. Beautiful. Ne'emasis and Rebbe Velo Rabbanon. Our Mishnah must reflect the view of Rebbe and not the Rabbanon. The Sanya par haba b'shmini, the par that is brought on the 8th day of Shmini Atzeres, betchila mefaisin alav divrei Rebbe. They would make a pius, right? They would go ahead and draw lots. These are the words of Rebbe. The Chachamim would say, Achos mishtei mishmaros telo shulshul b'parim also. So the Chachamim would say, no. It was interestingly enough, when you go through the order here, there were only 2 mishmoros who did not have a third opportunity at the par. So the Chachamim say that only the 2 families who did not have a third opportunity to bring the par on Sukkot, they're the ones who get the opportunity to do the par on Shmini Atzeres. So the Mishnah says that they drew a lottery on Shmini Atzeres. So that must reflect the view of Rebbe, not the Chacham. To which the Gemara says, no. So here's the difference. According to Rebbe, all the Mishmoros were eligible for the lottery. According to the Chachamim, only 2 of the mishmaros. But even according to the Chachamim, how do you choose which mishmar does the par? there was a lottery. So everyone will agree that there was a lottery for Shmini Atzeres. The Shaila just does what? Who participates in the lottery? Kiman Azla Desanyo, whose opinion is reflected in the following: Kala Mishmoros, Shonos, Umishalshos, Chutz Mishnei Mishmoros, Sheshonos Ve'in Mishalshos. All of the Mishmoros had an opportunity to be involved in the par service at least twice, at least even 3 times, except for 2 Mishmoros who had the opportunity to participate in the par service twice, but not 3 times. Name a Rebbe v'lo Rabbanon. It must be Rebbe, not the Rabbanon. To which the Gemara says, no, afilu tema Rabbanon. My love, shulshu b'pari achag. My love, I'm kind of read the conclusion. My love, shulshu b'pari achag. Are we not talking about, again, not the karbanos, not just stam karbanos, but dafka the pari achag? Umay kamash malon. What is coming to teach us? Kamash malon. Mi shekriv param ayom lo yakriv param l'machar elachozin chalila. Rather, what does it come to teach us? That Allah chalamaysa. I will say it was a special schos to participate in the parim, in the offering of the parim, and it's coming to teach us that if you offered the parim today, you were excluded from that service tomorrow. In other words, we wanted everyone. So what it turns out is all the kohanim offered up the parim at least twice. Some had the opportunity to go ahead and offer it up even 3 times. Amr Belazar, Chani Shivim Parim Kineged me. So over the course of Yom Tiv, right, going from the first day of Yom Tiv, when there are 13, to the last day of Yom Tiv, when there are 7, we offer a total of 70 bulls, 70 parim. Why do we offer up 70 parim? Well, so this is actually quite beautiful. So the Gemara says, Kineged Shivim Umos. Ultimately, again, it corresponds to the 70 umos, to the 70 nations. Quite beautiful. Par yochid lamali. So we'll say ultimately par yochidi lama. So ultimately again on Shmini Atzeres, where we only go ahead and offer up 1 par. Why is there 1 par in Shmini Atzeres? Kineged uma yechida. That 1 par ultimately again corresponds to the unique nation. And who is that? Klal Yisrael, right? So again, the 70 parim of Sukkis refer ultimately again to the nations of the world, and the 1 par of Shmini Atzeres refers to Klal Yisrael. What's the par of Shmini Atzeres compared to? Well, it's such a beautiful Gemara. What does it compare to? Mashal lemelech basar v'dam sha'amru la'avadav. This could be compared to an earthly king who said to his servants, Asuli Sudi Gidola. A king likes to invite all of his servants. Let's make a big su'uda. Li'amacharon. On the final day of the celebration, what does the king say? Amr li ohavo. The king says to his most beloved subjects, Ase li su'uda kitana kede she'ahana mimecha. Make a small su'uda so that I could derive benefit from you. Rabbi says such a beautiful, beautiful mashal. Sukkis is a Yom Tov where HaKadosh Baruch Hu ultimately shows that the entirety of humanity is His. Right? Right? The Jewish people have not cornered the market on God. The Ribono Shalom is the God over all humanity. Of Araya, 70 bulls corresponding to 70 nations. But Shmini Atzeres has only 1 bull. There's only 1 par. And what does that show? The unique HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kiviyachol invites us for a private su'uda with Him. A private su'uda with Him. And the Ribono Shalom says, Asuli su'uda kitana. Go ahead and just make a small su'uda so that you and I can have a more intimate setting together. Kedei she'ana mimcha. Ultimately, again, that I could derive benefit from you. I will say, we'll go back to that in just a moment. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. So we'll say, so this is the dynamic. Sukkis almost has this identity as a universal Yom Tov. A Yom Tov that benefits the entire world, whereas Shmini Atzeres is this small, personal, intimate time, intimate dinner, intimate relationship with the Ribono Shalom, just Klal Yisrael and us. So the Gemara says, Am Rabbi Yochanan, Aylehem la'ovdei kochavim, sha'avdu ve'en yodin ma sha'avdu. Woe to the nations of the world who have lost and they don't even realize what they have lost. We'll say what this means. This is so profound. Often the nations of the world think that the loss of the Beis Hamikdash is just our loss, Klal Yisrael's loss. But they don't even realize that our loss is their loss. That when we lost the Beis Hamikdash, they lost something profound as well. The Gemara says, because when the Beis Hamikdash stood, the Beis Hamikdash was mechaper on the Umos Ha'olam, on the nations of the world as well, was mechaper for them. And now when there's no Beis Hamikdash, va'achshav mi mechaper aleihem. Now who or what is mechaper? What atones for the nations of the world? It's such an incredibly profound yesod. Everyone thinks the loss of the Beis Hamikdash is just Klal Yisrael's problem. But what did we say in Slichas? Ki beisi beis tefillah yikari l'chol ha'amim. Right, and remember, what do we say? This house of tefillah is a house of tefillah for all the nations. And right after that, Shema Kolenu, meaning the Beis HaMikdash gave a sense of equilibrium to the entire world, and everyone benefited from the Mikdash. Even the 70 nations, even those who oppressed us, benefited from the Mikdash. And now, when there's no Mikdash, it's not just Klal Yisrael that's at a detriment, but it's all of humanity that's at a detriment. Such an incredibly profound and overwhelming Yisra. Well, I just tell you, in the 1 minute we have left, something very beautiful. You know, this idea of Shmini Atzeres being this unique relationship between Klal Yisrael and the Ribono Shel Olam. Aseli Sudi Kitana. There's a beautiful, beautiful idea by the Rishner. Rabbi Sola Brzezinski says in the Gemara Masechet Shabbos, where the guy, the person who wanted to convert, comes to Hillel and he says to Hillel, "Teach me Kala Torah Kula al Regel Achos." Right, on one foot. So remember again, first he goes to Shammai. Shammai is unhappy with him. Dachvo ba'amas abinyan. Shammai chases him away. And what does Hillel say? Teach me Kala Torah Kula Regel Achos. What does Hillel say? Madasani alecha lechavercha lo sabid. What you don't want done unto you, don't do to your fellow. V'yafterecha kamocha. So Rabbi Sola Brzezinski says, what was the Gentile asking when he says, "Teach me Kala Torah Kula Regel Achos"? So the Rishner says something beautiful. The non-Jew was asking Hillel, teach me the entire Torah about the one regel. There's one regel I don't understand. There's one regel I don't understand. Which regel don't I understand? I don't understand Shmini Atzeres. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. All the other regel I understand. Sukkah, I understand. Pesach, I understand. Shavuos, I understand. Shmini Atzeres, I don't understand. I don't understand. To which Hillel responds, you know what the entire essence of Shmini Atzeres is? HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves more than anything for his children to be together. Just like every parent has one simple wish. We have many aspirations for our children, but on a basic, like human level, I just want my kids to get along. I want them to love each other. I want them to respect each other. The Ribono Shel Olam is no different. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want from us? To love each other, to respect each other, and to get along. So what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? He provides us with one more day just so we can be with each other. What does the Gemara mean when it says, make for me one so that I can get benefit? What benefit does the Ribono Shel Olam get from us? The benefit the Ribono Shel Olam gets from us is when he sees his children getting along, when he sees his children loving one another, when he sees his children going out of their way for each other. That's the hana, that's the benefit that the Ribono Shel Olam receives from us. So when the Ger says to Hillel, so teach me Kala Torah Kula al Regel Achos, says the Rishner, he wasn't asking to learn Kala Torah Kula while standing on one leg. That's ridiculous. But what the Ger said is, I've learned the entire Torah. I want to convert. I've learned everything. One shaila. What's Shmini Atzeres? What is Shmini Atzeres? To which the Rishner says, "V'yahavta l're'acha kamocha." All right, well, so stop over here. Tomorrow, last daf of Sukkah, Emir Tzashem Mishnah Tov Mitzlachos, and we'll begin at the Mishnah.